I wonder what you've been thinking about in the run-up to Christmas. The chances are that you've probably forgotten what you were thinking about, because in the last few days your mind has been consumed by the fact that Christmas is, well, not going to be what we'd planned it to be. The reality is that this is probably the most difficult Christmas that any of us will ever have experienced. And so when some bloke comes on like me talking about love and joy and peace of hope, well, you'd be forgiven for thinking, what is he on about? Is this guy in the real world? How superficial does he want to be? But over the next few days, I want to offer you a different perspective, one that demonstrates that these four things that we focus on in the run-up to Christmas, often called Advent, these four things, love and joy and peace and hope, these are not things that suddenly just appear because of a story in the Bible. These are gifts intended to make a difference in the lives of people who are going through all sorts of rubbish. Everyday people like you and me. Each day this week we're going to take maybe 4 or 5 minutes just to focus on one of those four things, and then rounding them all up on the 5th day, which just happens to be Christmas Day. And today we're starting with joy. Let's face it, the story of the birth of Jesus in the Bible is a pretty big one. So any other story that might appear alongside it about the birth of another baby is likely to fade into insignificance. That's often the case for Mary's cousins, Elizabeth and Zechariah. These are people who the Bible tells us have a good reputation. They've done all the things that you're supposed to do. They've been faithful in serving their God. And yet in the midst of all that, the Bible tells us that there's a hole in their lives. In Luke's Gospel it says, Zacharias and Elizabeth were godly folk, careful to obey all of God's laws in spirit as well as by the letter. But they had no children. For Elizabeth was unable to conceive, and now they were both very old. Now I can't sit here and pretend that I know what that feels like, other than to say that I have journeyed with people who've gone through it. And what I do know is the misery that it brings. And it's in the midst of this misery that the Christmas story, as told in Luke's account, begins. Not with angels shining and a load of people standing in a stable crowded around a manger, swaying as they sing Hark the Herald. But the story begins in a place of misery, the disappointment of infertility. And the Bible implies that this situation that Elizabeth and Zechariah find themselves in, well, they've been praying about it for a long time, but to no avail. And then in this moment, in God's timing, he sends an angel to tell them that a baby is on the way. Talk about flip the story. Talk about lows and highs. A baby is to be born to a couple who thought that bus had departed long, long ago. And the angel even says to them, this baby, will be a joy and a delight to you and to many, many other people. There's so much more to this story that I could share with you. If you want to read about it, you can do that by looking in Luke chapter 1 in the New Testament. But for today, know this, that the God of this story, who is the God of my story, and who can be the God of your story too if you trust him, is able, capable of transforming misery into joy, whatever our situation.